The dim glow of neon signs flickered across the rain-slicked parking lot of the Rusty Anchor Bar, a forgotten outpost on the edge of a dusty highway town. It was the kind of place where truckers nursed their regrets and locals whispered about better days long gone. Inside, the air hung heavy with the scent of stale beer and cigarette smoke, the jukebox crooning a forgotten country ballad about lost love and open roads. At a corner table, a group of weathered men in leather vests, members of the Iron Vipers Motorcycle Club, shared quiet stories, their tattoos telling tales of battles fought and brothers buried. But outside, under the relentless patter of rain, a small figure huddled against the cold brick wall. Lily, no more than 7 years old, her pink raincoat soaked through, clutched a crumpled piece of paper like it was her only lifeline. Her wide eyes darted toward the bar's door, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. She'd been wandering for hours, ever since slipping away from the chaos at home, her mother's frantic arguments, the crash of breaking glass, the kind of fear that no child should know. The drawing in her hand was her secret hope, a crayon sketch of a motorcycle with a fierce rider, wings on the wheels, labeled in wobbly letters, "My hero will come." The door swung open with a creak, spilling warm light into the night. Ethan Hawk Harlan stepped out, his broad shoulders cutting a shadow against the neon. At 45, Hawk was a legend among the Vipers, scarred from a life of hard miles and harder choices. His face, lined like cracked leather, hid the ghosts of a war he'd left behind in the deserts overseas, and a promise he'd made to a little girl he'd never met. He'd buried that vow deep after losing his own daughter to illness years ago, the kind of loss that turned a man's heart to stone. Tonight, he just wanted a drink to chase away the thunder rumbling in his chest. He paused, lighting a cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating the tiny form by the wall. Lily's sob cut through the rain like a knife. Hawk's hand froze mid-drag. She looked up, her face a mask of terror, and without a word she thrust the drawing toward him. "Mister, you look like him, the hero. Will you help me? Mummy says bad men are coming." Hawk's world tilted. The drawing trembled in the wet air, a crude but unmistakable image of a biker just like him, with a viper patch on the vest. Something in her eyes pierced him, a flicker of the innocence he'd failed to protect once. He knelt slowly, his knees protesting against the gravel, and took the paper gently. Rain blurred the colors, but the words burned clear. "Promise to save us." His throat tightened, memories flooding back unbidden. The last letter from his dying wife, begging him to honor the oath he'd sworn to their girl, to be the guardian for any lost soul who needed it. He'd walked away from the club life after that, drifting until the Vipers pulled him back. But this was no coincidence. Inside the bar, the murmur of voices hushed as Hawk carried Lily through the door, her small hand gripping his like a vice. The Vipers, rough men with hearts forged in fire, turned as one. Big Mike, the club's grizzled sergeant-at-arms, set down his glass. "Hawk, what's this?" Hawk laid the drawing on the scarred wooden table, its edges curling from the damp. Lily clung to his leg, whispering, "She said to find the angels on bikes. You're them, right?" The room fell silent, the jukebox fading to a hum. Hawk's voice, gravelly from years of shouting over engines, broke the quiet. "This kid's lost, worse than lost. Her ma's in trouble. Sounds like some lowlifes are closing in. We ride for family, brothers, blood or not." The men exchanged glances, the weight of unspoken oaths hanging heavy. Tommy, the youngest Viper with a fresh scar from a bar fight gone wrong, leaned in. "You know what this means, Hawk. If we step in, it's all of us. The code." Hawk nodded, his eyes distant, seeing not the bar, but the dusty roads of his past. The promise he'd etched into his soul after burying his daughter under a simple stone marked "forever protected." He'd failed her, but maybe not another, means we honor what's right. Get the word out, rally the crew. By dawn we'll have her safe. As the first calls went out on crackling phones, the bar transformed. Maps were spread, engines revved in the lot outside, the roar building like a storm. Lily, wrapped in a spare Viper jacket too big for her, watched with wide eyes as these strangers became her shield. But Hawk felt the pull of something deeper, a redemption he'd chased for years, now staring back from a child's hopeful face. The rain eased as the convoy assembled, headlights piercing the night like beacons. Hawk knelt again, handing Lily the drawing, now dry by the bar's heat. "This hero? He's real, and he's got your back." Her smile, small but fierce, cracked the armor around his heart. Little did they know this act would unravel a web of corruption tied to the town's underbelly, crooked officials turning a blind eye to families in peril, all for a cut of the shadows. But for now, it was just a promise reignited, binding a lone girl to a brotherhood forged in steel and silence. The engines thundered to life, a symphony of loyalty echoing into the dawn. Hawk mounted his bike, Lily secure in a sidecar jury-rigged by the crew, and they rode out, not as outlaws, but as guardians. The road ahead twisted with danger, but in that moment, honor burned brighter than any fear. Yet as the miles blurred, Hawk couldn't shake the chill. The drawing's wings seemed to flutter in his mind, whispering of sacrifices yet to come. The Vipers were family, chosen in the fire of trials past, but this ride would test them all, pitting moral steel against the rot of power. Lily's tiny hand waved from the sidecar, a flag of hope in the gathering light. And Hawk rode on, the weight of old promises lifting, replaced by the fire of a new vow, no child left behind. The convoy snaked through the pre-dawn fog, tires humming on wet asphalt, the scent of exhaust mingling with pine from the roadside. Conversations crackled over helmet radios, plans forming, backstories shared. Big Mike's voice cut through. "Remember that run in 18, the one with the warehouse fire? We pulled through then. This is no different." Hawk grunted in agreement, but his mind wandered to the scars hidden under his vest, the shrapnel from a forgotten war, the tattoo of a dove he'd inked for his lost girl. Lily's presence stirred it all, a mirror to what he'd let slip away. She chattered softly now, pointing at the stars fading above, her fear ebbing with each mile. "You're like the drawing, strong." He glanced back, the first rays of sun glinting off his handlebars. "Stronger together, kid. That's the Viper way." But doubt gnawed at him. What if the trouble at her home was bigger than a family spat? Whispers from the bar hinted at a local gang muscling in, shielded by badges gone bad. Justice, the kind that stuck, demanded more than fists. It called for truth, the unyielding kind that exposed lies. As they crested a hill, the town lights twinkled below like distant warnings. Hawk's grip tightened on the throttle. This wasn't just a rescue, it was a reckoning, pulling him from the shadows of regret into the light of purpose. The road stretched on, promising trials that would forge them anew, or break them forever. The first light of dawn painted the horizon in streaks of gold and crimson, as if the sky itself were bleeding hope into the world below. The Iron Viper's convoy cut through the thinning fog like a blade, 20 bikes strong now, their engines a low, rumbling hymn that drowned out the waking birds. Ethan Hawk Harlan led the pack, his Harley purring beneath him, the sidecar where Lily rode swaying gently with the curves of the road. She clutched the edges with tiny fists, her earlier tears dried, replaced by a quiet wonder as the wind tugged at the oversized Viper jacket draped over her shoulders. The scent of damp earth and wildflowers rose from the fields flanking the highway, a fleeting reminder that life persisted even in the shadows of trouble. Hawk's mind raced faster than his bike. The drawing, folded carefully in his vest pocket, pressed against his chest like a talisman or a curse. It wasn't just crayon lines, it was an echo of his own buried oath, the one he'd whispered over his daughter's grave, under a sky much like this one. "I'll protect the innocent," he'd vowed then, to no one but the wind. But life had a way of mocking such words. Wars that scarred the soul, roads that led to empty beds. Joining the Vipers had been his anchor, a brotherhood bound by more than ink and leather. They were the family he'd chosen after blood had failed him, men who'd stared down their own demons and come out swinging for what was right. Big Mike rode shotgun on Hawk's flank, his massive frame hunched over the handlebars, beard whipping in the breeze. Over the radio, his voice crackled like gravel under tires. "You sure about this, Hawk? Kids' stories thin, bad men, mommy in trouble. Could be nothing, or it could be a trap. Remember that dust-up last summer with the Rattlers? Looked like a simple favor, ended with half the crew nursing wounds." Hawk's jaw tightened, the scar along his jawline pulling taut. He glanced at Lily, who was humming softly to herself, tracing patterns in the sidecar's worn leather. "It's never nothing when a child's involved, Mike." Her eyes, "They don't lie. We've got a code. Honor the call." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of shared history. Mike had been there through Hawk's darkest nights, pulling him from the bottle after the loss, reminding him that loyalty wasn't just for the living, it was for the promises that outlasted them. Behind them, Tommy gunned his engine to catch up, his youthful energy a spark in the steady rhythm of the group. "What's the plan when we hit town? Straight to her place?" The kid had fire, but Hawk saw the flicker of doubt in his posture, the same uncertainty that had gnawed at him after his first real scrape with the law, a botched aid run that left him questioning if justice ever rode clean. "We scout first," Hawk replied, his voice steady over the static. "No charging in blind. If there's rot in this town, cops turning cheeks for a payoff, we play it smart. Truth's our weapon, not the fists." The road dipped into a valley, the town emerging like a mirage. Squat buildings huddled around a central square, the kind of place where secrets festered behind picket fences. Smoke curled from chimneys, and early risers blinked at the approaching thunder of bikes, their faces a mix of curiosity and wariness. As they rolled into the outskirts, the convoy slowed, fanning out to avoid drawing too much heat. Lily pointed ahead, her voice small but clear. "That's our street, Mr. Hawk. The blue house with the crooked mailbox." Hawk nodded, easing off the throttle. The air shifted here, thicker, laced with the faint tang of rust and neglect. He could almost taste the undercurrent of fear, the way small towns hid their fractures under layers of normalcy. They parked at the end of the block, engines cutting off one by one in a cascading silence that amplified the morning chirps. Hawk lifted Lily from the sidecar, her feet touching the dew-kissed grass. She looked up at him, trust blooming in her gaze, like the first flower of spring. "You won't let them hurt Mommy, will you?" The question pierced deeper than any blade. Stirring the ghosts Hawk thought he'd silenced. He knelt to her level, the rough denim of his knees scraping the ground. "Not on my watch, kid. That's a promise." The Vipers gathered, a circle of leather and resolve, as Big Mike pulled out a worn map from his saddlebag. "Layout simple, house at the end, alley behind. Tommy, you and Jack circle back, eyes on the rear. Rest of us front and center, but quiet. No badges yet." Jax, a quiet veteran with eyes like polished flint, nodded, his own scars from a long-ago fire rescue hidden under sleeves of ink. He'd lost a brother to institutional neglect once, a story he rarely told, but it bound him to these rides like chains of steel. Hawk led the way, Lily's hand in his, the group moving like shadows through the misty streets. The neighborhood stirred, curtains twitching, a dog barking in the distance. But no one challenged them, not yet. As they neared the blue house, its paint peeling like old skin, a woman's cry echoed from inside, muffled but urgent. Lily froze, her face paling. "That's her, Mummy!" Hawk's pulse quickened, the drawing burning in his pocket. He signaled the crew to hold, then approached the door, knuckles rapping firmly against the chipped wood. Silence, then a shuffle. The door cracked open, revealing a woman in her 30s, dishevelled, eyes hollow with exhaustion. Sarah, that was Lily's mother from the kids' earlier whispers, blinked at the sight of them, her gaze landing on Lily with a gasp of relief. "Baby, where have you—" She pulled Lily inside, but Hawk's boot wedged the door, his frame filling the threshold. "Mom, name's Hawk. Your girl's been with us since last night. She came looking for help, said bad men are coming." Sarah's face crumpled, the weight of unspoken burdens crashing down. She glanced over her shoulder, as if expecting shadows to materialize. "You don't understand. It's not just men, it's the sheriff's boys. They run things here, shake down folks like us for protection. I stood up to them, reported the threats, and now they're circling." The Vipers shifted behind him, a wall of quiet strength. Big Mike stepped forward, his voice a low rumble. "We've seen that kind before. Corruption dressed as law. You need guardians. We're here." Sarah's eyes welled, the raw edge of desperation cracking her facade. Inside, the house smelled of stale coffee and fear, toys scattered like remnants of a shattered normalcy. Hawk felt the pull of redemption, sharp and insistent. This wasn't his fight, but Lily's drawing had made it so. A child's faith, igniting the embers of his soul. "Tell us everything," he said, crossing the threshold, as Sarah spoke, weaving a tale of bribes, silenced witnesses, and a town gripped by fear. The Brotherhood listened. It was bigger than one family, a web of moral decay where justice bowed to power. But in that moment, with Lily hugging her mother's legs, Hawk saw the path clear. They'd expose it, not with guns, but with the unyielding light of truth, the kind that honored old promises and forged new ones. Outside, Tommy's voice hissed over the radio. "Eyes on a black sedan, 2 blocks out, moving slow." The air thickened with tension, the dawn's promise now laced with peril. Hawk met Sarah's gaze, his own steady as forged iron. "We're in this together now, no turning back." The Vipers nodded as one, their loyalty a silent vow, binding them against the storm brewing on the horizon. Lily looked up, her small hand reaching for Hawk's. In her eyes, he saw not just a child saved, but a legacy reclaimed, one act of courage rippling through the rot toward a justice that endured. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the cracked sidewalk as the Iron Vipers held their ground outside the blue house. Inside, the air grew thicker with Sarah's words, each one a thread unraveling the town's hidden fractures. She paced the cramped living room, her hands twisting a frayed dish towel, while Lily sat cross-legged on the threadbare carpet, coloring a new drawing with borrowed crayons, angels on bikes, wings unfurled against a stormy sky. Hawk leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed, listening as the pieces fell into place. The sheriff's deputies weren't just shaking down locals for cash. They were silencing anyone who dared speak up, turning a quiet community into a cage of fear. Sarah had lost her job at the diner after refusing to pay tribute, and now threats had escalated. Notes slipped under the door, late-night knocks that left her trembling. "It's not about money anymore," Sarah whispered, her voice cracking like dry earth under boot heels. "They want control. My neighbor, old Mr. Ellis, he tried to go to the county office last month. Said he'd file a report on their protection racket. Next day, his barn burned down, no questions asked." Her eyes flicked to the window, where the curtains stirred in the breeze, carrying the faint scent of blooming jasmine from the overgrown yard. a mocking contrast to the dread coiling in the room. Big Mike stood sentinel by the kitchen doorway, his bulk a reassuring barrier, but his face darkened with the fire of old grievances. He'd seen this before, in the mill towns up north, where badges shielded the greedy, leaving families to fend for themselves. "Sounds like the kind of rot that spreads if you don't cut it out at the root," he rumbled, glancing at Hawk. The Brotherhood's code burned in his gaze. Protect the vulnerable, honor the truth, no matter the cost. Jax and Tommy lingered outside, their radios silent for now, but the tension hummed like an idling engine. Hawk nodded slowly, the weight of Sarah's story settling on his shoulders like the leather of his vest. It echoed his own past too closely. The war zone backdrops where authority twisted into tyranny, where he'd sworn an oath to a fallen comrade. Watch over the ones left behind. That promise had carried him through the haze of loss, from his daughter's empty room to the open road, where the vipers became his compass. But redemption wasn't a straight highway. It twisted through doubts and detours. Stepping into this mess meant risking the fragile peace the club had built, drawing lines against forces that played by no rules. Yet Lily's drawing, tucked against his heart, whispered otherwise. A child's hope demanded action, not hesitation. "We don't ride into wars without a plan," Hawk said, his voice low and measured, like the steady thrum of a well-tuned motor. He knelt beside Lily, watching her crayon strokes gain confidence, the colors bolder now. "But we don't walk away from family either, yours or ours." She looked up, her face smudged with graphite, and handed him the new sketch, a viper coiled around a shield, protecting a small figure. "For you," she said simply. The gesture hit like sunlight breaking through clouds, warming the cold corners of his resolve. Sarah sank onto the sagging couch, exhaustion etching deeper lines around her eyes. "I thought running would fix it, but Lily, she wouldn't stay hidden. Slipped out last night, said she had to find the heroes from her stories." Gratitude mingled with guilt in her tone, a mother's quiet ache. Hawk straightened, meeting her gaze. "Stories have power. They remind us what's worth fighting for, not with bullets, but with the kind of justice that sticks." He thought of the Viper's own trials, the warehouse blaze years back, where they'd pulled survivors from the flames, while officials dragged their feet, more interested in insurance claims than lives. That night had forged them tighter, proving loyalty outshone corruption. The radio crackled to life in Big Mike's hand, Tommy's urgent whisper slicing through. Sedans circling the block again, two guys inside looking twitchy, license plates local, sheriff's pool, I'd bet. The room stilled. The only sound, Lily's soft humming as she added stars to her drawing. Hawk's hand instinctively went to the pocket where his old service knife rested, not for drawing blood, but as a reminder of restraint. Violence solved nothing, it only fed the cycle. They needed proof, witnesses, records, something to shine light on the shadows. "Stay put," Hawk instructed Sarah, his tone brooking no argument. "Lock the doors, keep low, we'll draw them off." He signaled the crew, and they moved as one, slipping out the back into the alley where overgrown weeds brushed against their boots, releasing a earthy tang that masked their steps. The morning air hummed with possibility, the distant call of a rooster punctuating the quiet. Jax peeled off to flank the street, his movements fluid from years of navigating tight spots, while Tommy revved his bike just enough to rumble like thunder on the horizon. From the alley's mouth, Hawk watched the black sedan prowl past the house, its tinted windows hiding prying eyes. One of the men inside lit a cigarette, the cherry glowing like a warning ember. These weren't ghosts from Lily's fears. They were flesh and blood enforcers, emboldened by unchecked power. Hawk's mind raced through options, tail them to their source, gather intel without a scene. But as the car slowed near a parked truck, one deputy stepping out to scan the neighborhood, the moral line sharpened. This was no abstract evil. It threatened the fragile sanctuary they just claimed. Big Mike gripped Hawk's shoulder. A silent anchor. "We expose them, brother. Make the truth roar louder than their engines." Hawk nodded, the dawn light glinting off his rings, symbols of bonds unbreakable. The Vipers weren't vigilantes. They were stewards of honor, chosen kin who turned personal scars into collective strength. As the deputy returned to the sedan, tires crunching gravel, Hawk mounted his bike, the familiar vibration grounding him. Lily's new drawing fluttered in his mind, a beacon amid the gathering storm. They shadowed the sedan at a distance, weaving through side streets lined with weathered fences and faded campaign signs promising law and order. The town unfolded like a faded photograph. Once vibrant shops boarded up, faces in windows watching the procession with wary eyes. Whispers would spread, but that's what Hawk counted on. Ripples turning to waves, eroding the foundation of lies. Sarah's story wasn't isolated. It connected to others, a network of silenced voices waiting for a spark. By mid-morning, the sedan pulled into the sheriff's station lot, a squat brick building squatting at the town's edge, flag limp in the still air. Hawk cut the engine a block away, the Vipers forming a loose perimeter amid the scrub brush. Through binoculars borrowed from Jax's kit, he spotted the men sauntering inside, laughing as if the world bent to their will. Inside that building lay the heart of the corruption, files shuffled, reports buried, justice bartered like cheap whiskey. But doubt flickered in Hawk's chest, a shadow of his past failures. What if intervening shattered more than it saved? His daughter's memory surfaced, a soft rebuke. Promises weren't kept in safety, but in the fire of choice. He radioed the crew. "We document, we witness. No direct hits yet. Rally more if we can. Call in favors from the old runs." Affirmatives buzzed back, a chorus of loyalty that steadied him. As the sun beat down, warming the metal of his bike, Hawk felt the shift, from reluctant savior to unyielding guardian. Lily's faith, Sarah's desperation, they wove into the fabric of his redemption, pulling him toward a reckoning that would test the Viper's soul. The station loomed, a fortress of false authority, but truth had its own momentum, slow building like a revving engine ready to charge. And in the quiet before the push, Hawk whispered to the wind, honoring the oath anew, for the lost, for the chosen, for the light that pierced the dark. The midday sun hung relentless over the sheriff's station, turning the asphalt into a shimmering haze that distorted the air like a fever dream. Ethan Hawk Harlan crouched behind a rusted chain-link fence on the outskirts, his binoculars trained on the squat building's entrance. The iron Vipers had dispersed into the scrubland, bikes camouflaged under tarps, borrowed from a nearby farm, their presence a ghost in the heat. The scent of dry sagebrush mingled with the oily tang of distant exhaust, a reminder that even in stillness, the world churned forward. Inside the station, shadows moved behind grimy windows, deputies lounging, paperwork shuffled like cards in a rigged game. Hawk's pulse steadied with each breath, the weight of Lily's new drawing in his pocket a quiet anchor. It wasn't just paper and color. It was a mirror to his fractured past, reflecting the vows he'd buried under miles of blacktop. After his daughter's passing, he'd wandered the edges of purpose, the Vipers pulling him back with their unspoken creed. Stand for the overlooked, honor the fragile threads of trust. But this town tested that creed, its corruption a venom seeping into the soil, poisoning the innocent. Sarah's words echoed in his mind. The burned barn, the silenced pleas, a pattern of power unchecked, where badges shielded predators instead of prey. Big Mike hunkered down beside him, sweat beading on his furrowed brow, his massive hands fiddling with a small digital recorder smuggled in his vest. "Got the lens on that side door," he murmured, voice like the low growl of an idling engine. "If they slip, we catch it. No heroes today, just eyes and ears." Mike's loyalty ran deep. Forged in the fires of his own losses, a brother taken by a system that cared more for procedure than people. He'd ridden with Hawk through thinner times, reminding him that redemption came in quiet acts, not thunderous clashes. Across the lot, Tommy and Jax held position in a derelict shed, their radios linked in a web of whispers. Tommy's youthful impatience crackled through. Movement! Deputy from the sedan just handed off an envelope to the front desk. Looks thick. Cash? Hawk adjusted the binoculars. The scene sharpening into focus. The man from earlier, broad-shouldered with a smirk that screamed entitlement, pocketed a nod from the clerk. It was subtle, the kind of exchange that thrived in broad daylight, invisible to those too afraid to look. But the Vipers saw it, their chosen bond sharpening their gaze like honed steel. Hawk's thoughts drifted to Sarah and Lily, holed up in the blue house with boarded windows and a borrowed shotgun from Jax's kit. More for show than use. The girl's trust in him burned brighter than the sun overhead, a flame he'd nearly let gutter out in his years of drift. Promise to save us, her original drawing had pleaded, and now it pulled him into this web. Justice here wouldn't roar, it would whisper through evidence, building a case that no corrupt hand could bury. He recalled a similar stand years back, exposing a mill owner's graft that left workers destitute. The Viper's testimony turning the tide, not with force, but with the weight of truth shared among the broken. A door banged open, jolting him back. The deputy spilled out, climbing into a patrol truck, tires kicking up dust as they peeled away toward the town center. Hawk signaled the crew, and they moved like specters, closing in on the station's perimeter. Jax, ever the silent operative, slipped a tiny camera drone from his pack. A gadget from his firefighting days, modified for tight rescues. It hummed to life, a dragonfly in the sky capturing footage of the lot. Discarded receipts fluttering in the breeze, a back entrance where shadows lingered too long. Inside the fence, Hawk and Mike pressed against the wall, ears straining for voices. A muffled argument drifted out, something about the next collection and keeping the widow quiet. Sarah's neighbor, Mr. Ellis, no doubt. The words twisted in Hawk's gut, stirring the moral storm he'd long suppressed. Authority corrupted wasn't just a threat, it eroded the soul of a place, leaving families like scattered debris after a gale. He thought of his own family chosen, the Vipers, bound not by blood but by scars and oaths, their rides a testament to standing firm when the world bent. The drone feed buzzed in Mike's earpiece, got visuals, safe in the trunk, looks like files or photos. Tying back to the diner payoffs, evidence fragile but real, stacking like bricks in a wall against the lies. Hawk's hand clenched, the leather of his glove creaking softly. Doubt whispered, what if this exposed more than they bargained for, dragging old wars into the light? His service days had taught him the cost of truth, comrades lost to bureaucracy's blade. But Lily's face, fierce with newfound courage, silenced it. Redemption wasn't solitary, it rippled through the kin you claimed. As the drone retreated, a new sound cut the tension, a child's laughter echoing from the town square, pure and defiant. It pierced Hawk like dawn light, reminding him why they endured. We're building something here, he radioed the crew, voice steady as the horizon. Not just for one house, for all of them. Affirmatives hummed back, a chorus of resolve. Tommy's voice added fire. Station's clear now. We tail the truck, keep the pressure on without a spark. They retreated to their bikes, the sun dipping toward afternoon, casting elongated shadows that danced like allies. Hawk mounted up, the Harley's familiar rumble vibrating through his bones, grounding the whirlwind within. The road out twisted back toward the blue house, but the path ahead forked into uncertainty, alliances to forge, secrets to unearth. Sarah waited with stories of other victims, a network of quiet resistance ready to speak if shielded. The Vipers would be that shield, their loyalty a forge, turning pain into purpose. By the time they rolled up to the house, the air had cooled, carrying the faint aroma of cooling earth after a long day. Lily burst from the door, waving her latest creation, a collage of bikes and stars, symbols of guardians in the night. Sarah followed, her posture straighter, eyes alight with tentative hope. "Did you see them? The ones who—" Hawk dismounted, kneeling to her level. "We saw enough to start. Truth's coming, ma'am. Slow, but sure." Inside, as the crew gathered around a makeshift table of crates and maps, plans solidified, not raids, but outreach. Calls to trusted contacts outside town, old allies from veteran networks who'd faced similar shadows. Jax sketched routes, his steady hand betraying no tremor, while Tommy paced, energy channeled into strategy. Big Mike poured coffee, the steam rising like unspoken prayers. Hawk watched it all, the drawing's wings seeming to stir in his pocket, a promise evolving from personal vow to collective stand. The afternoon waned, tension coiling like a spring, but in that shared space, family bloomed, chosen, unyielding. Lily tugged Hawk's sleeve, whispering, "You're my hero now, for real." Her words sealed it, the moral fire igniting fully. Against the corruption's tide, they'd ride not as outlaws, but as the light that exposed the dark, honoring every scar, every oath in the quiet pursuit of justice that healed. If this chapter stirred something in you, smash that like button. It helps these stories of honor and heart reach more souls in need of hope. The afternoon light slanted through the half-drawn blinds of the blue house, casting striped shadows across the cluttered kitchen table where maps and scribbled notes lay like battle plans from a forgotten war. Ethan Hawk Harlan sat with his elbows planted on the scarred wood, the steam from a chipped mug of coffee rising in lazy curls that carried the bitter edge of necessity. Around him, the Iron Vipers formed a tight circle, Big Mike nursing a bruised knuckle from an earlier scrape with a loose fence, Tommy fidgeting with a pen that clicked like a restless metronome, and Jax methodically organizing the drone footage on a battered laptop, its screen glowing faintly in the dim room. Outside, the town hummed with deceptive normalcy, distant car horns, the murmur of neighbors tending gardens, the faint rustle of leaves in a breeze that hinted at evening's approach. Sarah hovered near the stove, stirring a pot of soup that filled the air with the comforting aroma of onions and herbs, a small act of defiance against the encroaching fear. Lily perched on a stool beside Hawk, her small fingers tracing the edges of her collage drawing. The paper now creased from being passed around the table like a sacred relic. The girl's eyes, wide and reflective, mirrored the room's undercurrent of resolve, a quiet storm building in the hearts of these unlikely guardians. Hawk felt it too, the pull of that old promise resurfacing like a tide he couldn't outrun. His daughter's memory lingered in the corners of his mind, not as a wound, but as a guiding light, urging him to weave this family's threads into the unbreakable fabric of the Viper's loyalty. "We've got fragments," Jack said, his voice even as desert stone, sliding the laptop toward the group. The footage played in grainy silence, the envelope exchange at the station, the deputy's casual nods, a time-stamped glimpse of a ledger page fluttering in the breeze before the camera caught it. No faces too clear, no smoking gun, but enough to suggest the pattern Sarah had described, the steady drain of protection fees from small businesses, the quiet threats that kept tongues tied. It's a start. Connects to the diner, Ellis's place. If we link it to the report Sarah filed, county eyes might turn this way. Tommy leaned in, his youthful face taut with the fire of injustice. County. Those suits are probably in on it, or too scared to poke the nest. We need locals to talk, witnesses who will back us without vanishing. He'd seen the cycle before, in his own hometown, where a crooked precinct had buried his cousin's complaint under piles of red tape, leaving scars that no road could outride. The Vipers nodded, their chosen bond humming like the vibration of engines at rest. a shared understanding that family extended beyond walls to anyone crushed under the boot of power. Hawk's gaze drifted to Sarah, who set bowls of soup on the table with hands that trembled just slightly. "You've got names? Folks who've been hit like you?" She nodded, sliding into a chair, her voice a whisper threaded with steel. "The baker on Main, Mrs. Harlan, no relation, just coincidence, lost her shop last year after refusing to pay up. Said the deputies inspected it one night, found code violations that weren't there before. And the mechanic, old Pete, he whispered to me once, about bribes for looking the other way on stolen parts. They're afraid. But if someone stands first..." Her words trailed off, eyes meeting Hawk's in a moment of raw connection, the weight of maternal desperation mirroring the father's grief he'd carried for so long. The room fell quiet, save for the soft slurp of soup and Lily's contented hum as she coloured beside her mother. Hawk felt the moral crossroads sharpening. Expose the rot quietly, risk it festering back to life, or rally the silenced into a chorus that no badge could drown. Redemption had always been his shadow companion, born from the sands of war where he'd failed to shield a squadmate from friendly fire gone wrong, a mistake that echoed in every lost cause he'd since chased. The Vipers were his redemption forged in motion, brothers who'd pulled him from the abyss after his daughter's light faded. Now this town tested them all, pitting their honor against a system that twisted justice into chains. Big Mike broke the silence, his rumble like thunder rolling in from afar. "We start small. Visit the baker tomorrow, feel out the water. No pressure, just show we're here listening." Agreement rippled through the group, plans etching deeper into the maps with pencil marks that smudged like tentative hopes. But as the sun dipped lower, painting the walls in amber hues, the radio on the table crackled to life. Tommy snatched it up, his face paling. "Hawk, patrol trucks back on the street. Slow roll, lights off. They're sniffing close." Tension coiled like a spring in Hawk's chest, the soup turning leaden in his stomach. He rose, motioning Jax and Tommy to the windows, their silhouettes blending with the curtains as they peered out. The truck idled at the corner, its engine a low growl that vibrated through the floorboards, headlights cutting swathes through the gathering dusk. Inside, shadows shifted. Two figures, perhaps the same from the sedan, scanning the quiet block with the predatory patience of wolves. Lily froze mid-stroke, her crayon hovering, eyes darting to Hawk for reassurance. He knelt beside her, his calloused hand covering hers gently. "Easy, kid. Heroes don't flinch." Sarah's breath hitched, but she gathered Lily close, the pair a small island of warmth amid the storm. Hawk stepped to the door, cracking it just enough to feel the cooling evening air, laced with the metallic hint of impending rain. The truck lingered, then accelerated with a whine, vanishing around the bend, but the message hung clear. They were marked now. The Viper's presence a thorn in the sheriff's side. Doubt flickered in Hawk's mind, the old ghosts whispering of costs too high, endangering the club, drawing lines that might bleed. Yet Sarah's quiet thanks as she cleared the table anchored him, her gratitude a balm to scars unseen. Night fell fully, stars pricking the velvet sky visible through the blinds, as the crew bunked down in shifts, Jax on watch, his vigilance a silent vigil from the porch. Conversations turned low, stories shared like embers. Mike's tale of a mill strike where the Vipers ferried strikers to safety under cover of night. Tommy's raw admission of family fractured by similar shadows. Hawk listened from the couch, Lily curled asleep against his side, her breathing steady as a heartbeat. The drawing in his pocket crinkled softly, its wings a reminder that promises endured, bridging the gaps between loss and legacy. By midnight, with the house wrapped in quiet, Hawk slipped outside, the gravel crunching under his boots like whispered secrets. The air cooled his skin, carrying the earthy scent of night-blooming flowers from the yard. He lit a cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating his lined face, and stared at the dark silhouette of the town. This ride had pulled him from drift to purpose, the chosen family expanding to include a mother and child on the edge. Corruption thrived in silence, but their light, fueled by loyalty and truth, would pierce it. As rain began to patter, soft and insistent, Hawk exhaled smoke toward the stars, vowing silently, no more shadows unchecked. The dawn would bring allies, revelations, a push toward justice that honored every unspoken oath. Inside, the vipers stirred in their rest, bound tighter by the night's vigil. Lily dreamed of flying bikes, her small smile a beacon in the dim room. Hawk returned, settling beside her, the weight of redemption settling not as burden, but as wings unfurling. The road to reckoning stretched on, fraught with ethical tempests, but in the heart of this makeshift family, honor burned eternal, a quiet fire against the gathering dark. The rain came down in earnest now, a steady drum against the tin roof of the blue house, turning the night into a symphony of whispers and sighs. Ethan, Hawk, Harlan stood on the sagging porch, the damp chill seeping through his leather vest, mingling with the earthy petrichor rising from the sodden ground. The cigarette between his fingers burned low, its ember a fleeting glow against the inky blackness of the town. Stars hid behind the clouds, but in their absence, the distant hum of a lone engine echoed like a warning. Patrols circling, shadows probing the edges of their sanctuary. Hawk crushed the butt under his boot, the spark dying with a hiss, and turned back inside, the door creaking softly behind him. In the living room, the vipers kept their vigil in hushed tones, the glow of a single lamp casting warm pools of light over faces etched with quiet determination. Big Mike slouched in an armchair, his eyes half-lidded but alert, polishing a chain from his bike with methodical strokes that spoke of rituals born from long nights on the road. Tommy paced the perimeter, glancing out windows fogged by breath, his energy a coiled spring ready to unleash. Jack sat cross-legged on the floor, reviewing the laptop footage again, the soft clicks of keys punctuating the rain's rhythm. Sarah had retreated to the bedroom with Lily, tucking the girl under quilts that smelled of lavender and faded dreams. But sleep evaded them both, whispers of thanks drifting through the thin walls like fragile prayers. Hawk settled onto the couch, the springs groaning under his weight, and pulled the collage drawing from his pocket. Lily's stars twinkled in crayon, encircling the viper shield, a child's vision of protection that pierced the armor he'd worn for years. It stirred the embers of his old vow, the one etched in the desert sands after his daughter's light dimmed, promising to guard the innocent against the world's cruelties. That loss had hollowed him, turning roads into escapes until the Viper's brotherhood filled the voids with chosen ties, men who'd shared his scars, forging loyalty from the forge of shared trials. This night, with corruption's web tightening around them, felt like the culmination, not just a rescue, but a reclamation of honor long deferred. Big Mike's voice broke the quiet, low and resonant. Dawn's not far. We move at first light, hit the baker's, then Pete's garage, get their stories on record, build the chain. Nods rippled through the room, a silent oath renewed. Tommy stopped pacing, his face softening in the lamplight. What if they clam up? Veer's a hell of a chain. Jax looked up, his flinty eyes steady. Then we show 'em ours. We've broken stronger ones. The words hung, heavy with the weight of their history. The mill strike, the warehouse inferno, runs where they'd stood as shields for the voiceless, proving that justice bloomed from seeds of courage, not force. As the clock ticked toward morning, Hawk slipped into the kitchen for coffee, the pot's gurgle a comforting counterpoint to the storm outside. Sarah emerged from the bedroom, Lily asleep on her hip, the girl's cheek pressed against her mother's shoulder in innocent repose. "Can't thank you enough," Sarah murmured, her voice threaded with exhaustion but laced with steel. I thought we were alone in this. Hawk poured a mug, the steam curling like unspoken regrets. No one's alone when the right call comes. Your girl's drawing. It woke something. Reminded me promises don't fade. They wait. Her eyes met his, a flicker of understanding passing between them. Parents bound by loss, now allies in redemption's quiet fire. The first grey light filtered through the rain-streaked windows, painting the room in muted tones of silver and slate. The vipers rose as one, shrugging on vests damp from the night, the scent of wet leather mingling with fresh-brewed coffee. Lily stirred, rubbing her eyes, and toddled to Hawk, clutching the edge of his pant leg. "We going to make the bad men go away?" He knelt, the floorboards creaking, and ruffled her hair gently. "We're going to make the truth shine, kid. That's how heroes win." Her smile, small but radiant, cracked the last fissures in his heart, sealing the vow anew. They rolled out in a subdued convoy, engines purring low to avoid drawing eyes, the rain easing to a mist that beaded on handlebars like tears unshed. The town awoke sluggishly, shops unlocking with the jangle of keys, faces peering from doorways as the bikes ghosted past. At the baker's on Main, Mrs. Harlan, a wiry woman with flour-dusted hands and eyes shadowed by worry, hesitated at the door, her apron twisted in her fists. But when Sarah stepped forward, voice steady, recounting her own stand, the dam broke. Words tumbled out, inspections rigged, fees that bled her dry, a ledger hidden in her oven mitts proving the payoffs. Jax recorded it all, his camera a silent witness, while Tommy stood guard, his presence a wall against the street's watchful gaze. From there to Pete's garage, a grease-stained haven reeking of oil and rubber, where the mechanic, grizzled and guarded, shared tales of parts vanishing into sheriff's impounds, bribes demanded for silence. "Thought I was the only fool fighting it," Pete grunted, sliding over faded receipts that linked to the station's web. Each confession wove tighter the evidence, a tapestry of moral decay exposed thread by thread. Hawk watched it unfold, the weight lifting from his shoulders like fog, burning off under the rising sun. This was redemption's rhythm, not thunderous clashes, but the steady build of truth, honoring the chosen family's creed, loyalty as the blade that cut through corruption's veil. By noon, they returned to the Blue House, arms full of documents and hearts heavier with purpose. Calls went out to county contacts, veteran networks unbound by local strings, relaying the proof in encrypted bursts. The sheriff's office stirred, radios crackling with unease as inquiries flooded in from higher ground. Whispers spread through the town like wildfire on dry grass. The vipers weren't invaders, but liberators, their ride a beacon for the silenced. Sarah hugged Lily close on the porch, the mist clearing to reveal a sky of unbroken blue, while Big Mike clapped Hawk's back, his grin broad. "You called it, brother. Honor rides on." As evening fell, the first cracks showed, deputies slinking from the station, the sheriff's bluster on local airwaves faltering under scrutiny. No arrests yet, but the tide turned, investigators arriving from afar, files seized under lights that no bribe could dim. Hawk sat with Lily on the steps, watching fireflies dance in the yard, their lights an echo of the stars in her drawing. "You did it?" she whispered, leaning against him. He shook his head, voice gravelly with emotion. "We did. Family sticks." The vipers gathered nearby, beers cracked in quiet celebration, stories flowing like the road itself, bonds deepened, scars shared, a legacy of sacrifice etched in the quiet victories that outlasted storms. In that golden hour, Hawk felt the ghosts settle, his daughter's memory no longer a spectre, but a gentle wind at his back, the promise fulfilled in the faces around him. Corruption crumbled not to fists, but to the unyielding light of truth and loyalty, a moral justice that healed the fractured. The town breathed freer, families like Sarah's stepping into the light, chosen kin expanding the circle. As night deepened, Engines idled softly in the drive, ready for the road home, but changed, forged anew in honour's fire. Lily's drawing, pinned to the fridge inside, fluttered in the breeze, wings spread wide, a testament to promises kept, redemption claimed, and the enduring power of hearts united against the dark. Thank you for riding this journey with us. Stories like these thrive on your support. If it touched your soul, hit that subscribe button and join the pack for more tales of grit, grace, and unbreakable bonds.